Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your past suggestions. This one having to do with a suggestion that was well over 2 years ago, so another one way back when. And I picked this one because in looking at the information, there was a lot of encounters to go from. Normally when we're talking about cryptids, it's quite rare to come across one that have so many people that have encountered it. No, I mean usually you're lucky if you have barely two or maybe even three type of encounters. But in this case, with this cryptid, no, I mean there's multitude of them, and it's been happening most recently too. Apparently, this set of encounters they started sometime in the 70s and then have continued pretty much every decade thereafter. It does have to do with a cryptid that's related to an all-star, in this case like a Bigfoot-like creature, but it has one distinct notion with its face, something that definitely stands it out, and you'll know about that here in a minute. So I'm talking about this. It's known as, in this case, like the New Jersey Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but it has a much more popular moniker, and that's the Big Red Eye. So very, very distinct. Once I saw that particular name, the Big Red Eye, I wanted to go ahead and see more information on it. It definitely made me interested. So let's go ahead, let's talk about all the info tied to this cryptid known as the Big Red Eye. So what is this? Well, essentially, again, it's a Sasquatch slash cryptid, Bigfoot, that's living somewhere in New Jersey, in particular Sussex County. I also picked this too because I'm a big fan of a show that only lasted like a couple episodes called Car Lot Rescue, and one of their episodes took place at a dealership right there in Sussex County. So small world. It's interesting to see something like this linked later on. So I can only imagine if the people that were featured in that episode have also heard of this cryptid, because it definitely seems to be this Big Red Eye a popular attraction, not an attraction, but something that everyone knows about there within that location. So yes, it's your average Sasquatch. So in this case, it's tall. It's muscular in some cases, very, very hairy, lots of long matted hair. It could either be dark colored hair, some versions could be lighter colored hair. It's kind of hard to tell because the experience most people have, lots of encounters like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't seem to be long. Like people will just see this thing and then get the hell out of there. They just have brief glimpses into it altogether. But the big thing that stands out happens to be those red eyes that it has. Not necessarily why it's called the Big Red Eye rather than eyes in a plural sense, but in this case it does have two eyes, and both of them seem to be just gigantic and glowing red. Now it's debated as to whether they truly glow red, or if it's just a reflection, in this case either from the moonlight or from lights shining either from flashlights slash headlights. I'm guessing it's more on the lines of reflection, because if you've ever seen animals out in the nighttime, you stare at them from a certain angle, their eyes definitely look otherworldly. But in this case, instead of reflecting back like let's say with a light color, it's red, and that makes it by far the most notable thing about this creature. The interesting thing though is most of these encounters happen to be from way far away. Like this creature is also known for one other thing. It's supposed to have like the most downright scary blood-curdling scream out there between anything else that people have heard of. I mean, people hear all the time whenever you're out in the forest, out in the woods, or if you live in a rural area and happen to be surrounded by that type of environment, you'll hear those kind of noises out there. It'll be your average wolf, maybe it'll be a bear, whatever is the case. They sound distinct though. Like people can pick them apart and then realize, it's just a common animal. This thing though, whatever type of moaning it does, whatever type of screams, it's supposed to make people's hair stand upright. Like it is supposed to be absolutely horrific. You do not hear something like this. Like the encounters I was reading, some people there in Sussex County stated that this is the type of moaning slash screaming that'll go straight through the core, like it'll actually shake the environment, or it'll just make the person shake in eeriness, like they'll have those shivers coming on down them. So I could only imagine how that would sound like. Imagine if you're, let's say, out there and you happen to be working at night, or if you happen to be out in the backyard just relaxing, and then you hear these screams. Absolutely, people will just turn themselves in, like they're not going to stay out there any longer. Now, as far as some real encounters, like in this case, the stuff that people have seen eyewitness type of encounters, there are a good several of them. I include a link below, in fact. It's from Weird New Jersey or weirdnj.com. They include some pretty good outright, let's say face-to-face, if you call it, encounters with these Bigfoot. Some of them that stand out happen to be that one was a couple, they were walking down the road, just essentially walking their dog. And as they were doing so, they saw a creature there looking back at them. And the way it was stated was, these lights, again, they were just emanating from it, almost like glowing, like LED type lights. Not exactly like, again, like coming internally, but instead more like of a reflection. But they saw it. It was tall. It was shaggy. It was something along the lines of Bigfoot, of Sasquatch. So that's what they interpreted it. But interestingly enough, it just simply looked back at them. Didn't seem to do anything bad outright. In fact, that's another common theme with regards to this New Jersey Sasquatch, is the idea that it just simply is minding its own business. Such was the case here. They even noticed that its arms were just hanging limply right by its side. You know, it wasn't just doing anything, just staring back right at them. Of course, that was enough for them to try to get the hell out of there immediately thereafter, but that was one typical encounter. There's some more, in fact, too. Apparently there was, I guess the most earliest or most famous one happened to be in the 70s. There was some park rangers there in New Jersey that had heard something, like not necessarily like what it was outright, but they heard that something was happening, and so they decided to investigate, while one of the park rangers kind of stayed back, and then boom, that noise happened yet again. Whatever that screaming was, that unearthly scream, it occurred, but it seemed to be really, really close. And so when that happened, then the two forest rangers ran out while the other one saw them run out, and they didn't try to investigate it thereafter, which makes sense. You hear something like that, you do not necessarily want to see what exactly is behind that noise. There's another story of a woman who was driving down the road, more along the lines of a dirt road, and as she was doing so, that's when she saw this creature again right there towards the road looking back at her. She thought it was maybe along the lines of an awkward looking bear, but the closer she got, in fact she stopped her car somewhere nearby, that's when she saw this creature for what it truly was, and then it lumbered off into the woods. But she too saw it again, being a large Sasquatch-like creature, those big red eyes, and she in turn was really, really scared with what was going on there. So just another encounter involving this situation. Police have also been called, reading some of these encounters. Police have been called because another person saw something, heard something as well, saw the eyes, in this case coming from a brush, but whenever they called the police, they came out and there was nothing there. Clearly, you know, whatever it was already long gone, but that goes to show that in this case, law enforcement was also involved. Really, the only evidence that has been tied to anything related to the big red eye happens to be just overturned garbage cans. That seems to be it. Not even footprints have been found of this creature. That's how mysterious this thing is. It definitely covers its tracks well. And again, the idea seems to be that it doesn't do anything to people to draw more attention. In fact, all these encounters point to the same thing. Whenever somebody comes into their location, this thing will hightail it out there. Like it'll just won't stay, it'll just leave. So whenever noises have been heard, in some cases the theme also seems to be really late at night, 2 in the morning type stuff, and people go and try to investigate. The only evidence related to those noise, because this thing would have left seeing them coming, is some overturned garbage cans. So just another common theme tied to this New Jersey Sasquatch. But that's it. That's really all the info tied to this unique creature with the big red eyes. Imagine something like this staring back at you at night. I imagine it's one of those things where it has to be, you have to be there to experience it, to truly know the terror that this thing can cause just by looking back at you. I know I would. Like, if I see something like this at night, it's not good. It's not good. I mentioned that in one of my videos, the ghost hunt that I did in Las Vegas when I went to Good Springs. I was out there at Good Springs late at night. We were out there like at like 11 p.m. or so. I'm sorry, 11 p.m. And it was a location that it's so remote. I've never been out in that type of, I guess you'd call it, desert area before. Small town out in the middle of the desert. Dark as night as can be out there because there's so little lighting. There's no city lighting, nothing. So it's just completely dark. And there we were, and I was just in a corner, like a remote area, just trying to investigate, and then I heard coyotes nearby. I've never heard coyotes out in the wilderness before, especially what sounded to me like so nearby. That stuff freaked me out. So imagine something like this. You hear something like this whatever, this blood-curdling scream, these wailing sounds that this big red eye makes. I would definitely hightail it out there too. So, but if anyone is from that area, Sussex County, please post those comments. Let me know if anyone has heard of this creature or the legends associated with it. Apparently, there's even festivals that happen from the legend of this creature. Like, people are so aware of it there that it's taken on its own legend, and so that's why they dedicate things to it. So, but if anyone comes from that area, knows someone, friends, family members, whatever is the case, and happens to know more info, please post those comments below. That would be good to hear. I wonder again if that dealership that was featured in Carlisle Rescue that happened to be there in Sussex County, I wonder if anyone there to this day can also testify to this legend of the big red eye. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.